Welcome to this third quarter event with Penneo. Today with me on the call I have Nicolaj Nielsen, CEO and co-founder, and Casper Christiansen, CFO of Penneo. We will in this presentation or call try to dig into the Q3 numbers, but we will also try and look at the events surrounding this quarter. Not the numbers, but actually what is shaping up Penneo to have a better product proposition and a value proposition to the customers. Some household information on the right side. You will have the possibility through a chat to ask questions, and I will hand them over to the presenters. But let's get it started, and I will hand the call over to Nicolaj Nielsen and take it from here.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Nicolaj, and I'm one of the co-founders and currently interim CEO of Penneo. This call is mainly on the Q3 numbers, but since this is the first one we're doing here together with you, Michael, we decided just to spend 3-4 minutes, just give a very, very brief introduction to it. So we are a software as a service company located here in Copenhagen. We have currently around 1,800 customers, so we are a B2B company, headquartered in Denmark, but for the last years we have grown to Sweden, Norway, Belgium, and now also internationally beyond that. Our key segment is accountants, and many will know us from the annual filing, where approximately 60% of all companies use Penneo to sign their annual reports. As I said, we're based in Copenhagen, 22 nationalities, 75 employees, and we think that's one of our strengths, that we can actually attract all that talent to our headquarters here in Copenhagen. We was listed here from June this year. And if you want to know more about this, about the background for our company and the introduction, I have added here a URL for the next week's webinar. So Michael, if you switch to the next slide. So what do we do? I think many in Denmark will know us from our signing. So basically we started out as a digital signature platform, but we've grown beyond that. And over the last years, we focused more and more on the auditing industry. So on this slide, you see sort of the customer journey seen from an auditor perspective. So they want customers in, and there's a lot of regulation regarding that, KYC, anti-money laundering, etc., etc. Then when you become a customer of the auditor, the auditor has to use the system. That is not what we do. We team up with these partners. That could be like Silverfin, whatever. The third point will actually be signing of the annual report, and that's where we started. That's, you could say, our stronghold. And then finally, the auditor will then do filing to the authorities afterwards. So you can say this slide was taken from our IPO, where we said, what are we doing right now is the signature, and we will then develop both the customer onboarding on the other side and the filing. So Michael, if you go to the next slide. And that's a little bit what happened in the last quarter, or actually just after the end of Q3. And as you saw on the previous slide, one of the things we wanted to expand was the customer onboarding. So before an auditor can take in any new customer, they have to validate that customer. So basically before they can give you any advice, they say, hey, please validate that you are in fact Nicolaj or Michael. And we had this, you can say, more simple product for that. But we acquired a Danish startup called CLA Reply for that. So we have now more an end-to-end solution. Of course, we're currently expanding that, but that was an important step in developing this, you can say, one-stop shop for auditors. If you go to the next slide. Yes. A second thing that also happened in the quarter is also part of our long-term plan is, of course, the national expansion. As I started to say, we start out of Denmark. We now have a stronghold in the Nordics, where we can say the majority of the top accounting companies are using us. And we then, in 2020, expanded into Belgium. And here in October, we signed one of the top 10 auditing customers in Belgium, which is a great sign for us that we can actually also get big customers outside Belgium. What's also happened is that we are now also developing our platform to handle other EIDs, like we already have NemID in Denmark, Bank ID in Norway and Sweden, etc. And during this quarter, or just after the end of the quarter, we announced that we're also ready in Finland. So this is part of our internationalization journey, where we are initially focusing on Europe, And as you can see on the left, there's a lot of companies, countries, the light green, where we're not in yet, but which we find interesting because they have the needed EID so they can support our platform. So in short, if I just wrap up here in 5 minutes, we are a B2B SaaS company, started in Denmark, grown out to Scandinavia. We're focusing a lot on delivering an end-to-end solution to the auditing industry. And what you'll see in the years to come is that we continue our international expansion.
And I think maybe a question to this internationalization expansion, you know, everybody is talking in this business about that the digitalization has moved maybe 3-4 years in advance lately. You know, all countries are interested in digitalizing all the parts of the society. Is that something you are seeing? Is that helping your expansion plans around the countries?
Well, it's hard to, you can say, all these plans for national EIDs, so that part of digitization has been in progress the last, you can say, 5-10 years. And you can say what happened is that we in Scandinavia have been on forefront of that, maybe due to a strong government that could sort of say force it through. But of course, what you see is that rest of Europe and basically also rest of the world have more or less adopted that strategy. They're not as far as we are right now, but they are progressing towards that. Just the second part of the question is, what has the pandemic done with that? I think we are impacted positively like many other software companies because people are working from home, they need signatures, etc. Of course, short term, it was a shock for many because there was no decision process in place, right, during the spring. Now we have moved to a new phase where basically companies are used to getting working virtually. In short, I think it's this. What's happening this year is, of course, really a strange year and a sad year in many ways. But in terms of digitalization, I don't think it's purely negative.
Perfect. And should we go into the numbers?
Yeah, and maybe Michael, I can collaborate a bit on the Corona digitalizations discussion here. When you're looking at the left side on this chart, you will see our current client base, customer base. And what we have seen in the third quarter this year is that our uplift on our current subscription base is a bigger growth rate in the uplift due to the integration with the current customers. They integrate with Penneo a lot more than they have done before. But I'm not the right person to answer if it's keep going. But this is what we see out of the number right now, just to answer that question in the numbers perspective.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I think to understand Penneo as a share on investor case is the purpose for this call. We need to understand our subscription model, our price model. So if you look at the left side on this chart, then you'll see a column called churn. This is the amount of annual recurring revenue that we are losing on a customer who are leaving Penneo. This is about 3-4%. It keeps steady year around that percent. And in my opinion, this is a very good and low number. Since churn is a negative thing, I'm proud that I'm in a company where we can keep our customer happy and they are not leaving us. Somebody or sometime I get the question, what kind of customer is it leaving Penneo? And Penneo, to understand Penneo, you have to understand that we have a very strong product and also a price reflecting what you get in Penneo. And if you're buying Penneo as a more genetic tool, you will feel the price could be a very or in small way expensive if it's just a genetic one-to-one signing tool. So what we see is the person or the company who's leaving Penneo again is the small customers, and that's explained why it's the small numbers in here, because it's AR crowns. The next column you see here is uplift. So when we see we are losing 800,000 a year in subscription, then we uplift our current customer base with the 4.1 million here. So meaning that if you're just looking at the current customer base before 2020, we see that we uplift approximately 3.23 million from 25 to 28.3. And on the right side of this chart, we see that we are getting new customer in. New customer is a way of getting the future growth, not just because they sign up, but also because the data show us that when you first become a customer, then you will over time engage more and more with Penneo, so that we can, improve the customer base in terms of ARR.
Perfect. And I guess the low churn is maybe highlighting, and you can maybe express it a little bit more, that you are not just a digital signing company. You are now more like an infrastructure, much more into the company's digital infrastructure, which is protecting you. I don't know whether you can put some more words on it. I guess that churn number is also symbolizing that.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, if you're an investor in Penneo, that our subscription is based on a product you as a customer buy into, and if you're first implementing Penneo in your company, it's a huge part of your company and your daily process. So when you have automated that kind of process, you don't want to go to another simple signing solution, because we are not a signing solution. We are a processing solution, and mainly for auditors, where we are answer a lot of pain, come up with a solution around. There's a lot of stakeholders in the annual report. You have to get the signing in a timeline, in the correct order, and so on. So we solve a big pain for example, auditors.
And if I can add just a few words. So when we talk about position, I think it's extremely important to just point out that if you just want this simple signing solution, and if you are a small company with 3 employees and you just want to send a contract for signature, maybe Penneo is not the right thing for you, because we moved away from that. We think both to provide value for our customers, but also for our shareholders, is that by providing this more, you can say, tailor-made system to some specific industries, that we can add more value. And that's why we have these high market shares, especially in the auditing industry in the Nordics, is because we have tailored our solution to that. And I think that's what this 4% churn represent. It's basically not a big auditor that will churn. It's maybe a smaller company coming in and realizing that's not for us. And of course, 4% is by any industry standard very low. And as Casper said, the opposite is that actually the 22% uplift per customer show that when we have a customer in, they're using us more and more.
Yeah. I think we can go to the next slide if you don't have any further questions. Yeah. If you're a person not understand or not have seen the ARR, annual recurring revenue, before, I think it's a main point here to understand the way Penneo is operating is to understand the how do you say, the more the steady development of our revenue measured in a yearly value. So this is a chart showing the colors represents the year that the customers has become customers. So if you see that we are growing from 2 million in 15 to 33 million end of Q3 this year, this is a picture showing that the customers every year, as we speak as before, uplift and year over year, that we can, it's allowed us to invest more to get new customer in, since we know they're customer for a long time. So we can spend more money on getting new customer in than we could if the customers just was customers in, let's say, 4 or 5 years. So in our case, we only have one time where we saw a cohort decreasing. It was the 14th cohort. It decreased from 16th to 17th and never since have we seen a cohort decrease. All other years they have increased year after year after year. So that is the point that you have to understand when you see our P&L and we have a negative EBITDA. Our journey for now is to buy in customers, then we can grow. So new customers and grow existing customers. That's our main journey right now. So that's important to notice when you read our P&L.
And I think it makes sense, why so much focus on the if everybody can draw a line, they can see if you can add on top of something not disappearing, then you have a very sharp curve upwards. But let's go through some of the PLL numbers.
Yeah. So I think this is the first time that we are actually disclosing our revenue. So I think that a lot of investors have asked me why I'm not showing the revenue. So the thing you have to understand in Penneo is that we are coming up from a level where I can say we was a startup in 2014, and then over time we have developed both from the money from the small investors in the beginning, angel investors, but mostly we have grown on the customers' revenue generated cash flow. So until 19, we sold a huge package with signatures, this better to a smaller value per signature we sold. And that model we changed in the beginning of 19 to a purely subscription-based model, but we're still keeping focus on getting cash into growth. And that's why we sold the product as a 3-year deal to get a lot of cash in. So when we're talking about our yearly value of our subscription base, then we see that we are growing by 38% the last year-on-year numbers. But in terms of revenue, we are only growing 18%. It's still a good number because you have to understand all the customers that we invoiced last year is not renewed this year. And we are following an international accounting principle saying that we should recognize 90% of our revenue when we invoice it right now, and we should defer 10% over the subscription period. So when we are invoicing 3 years in 19, then the revenue would not come again in 20 and 21, but will come again in 22. And from then on, we'll invoice yearly. So if you see the next 2 years, you will see that our invoice is growing, but it's not growing that fast as our ARR because we are missing out on the customers being customers in 19. But in 2022, you'll see that then you'll see the revenue following more to the ARR development. It's a bit hard to understand it, to describe in a simple way. So please ask question if it's not explained that well.
Yeah, no, maybe you can clarify it a little bit extra. But if I should understand it, you're saying what is important to me, that in 22 your revenue growth will be very simple to the ARR. So the best number to follow the momentum in growth in Penneo is actually looking at the ARR. So it's also a reason for investors to look a little bit more and why you stress out the ARR.
Yeah. And it's important to follow the numbers behind the ARR. So you have to understand that Penneo is a company. It's not just getting new customers in. We are also developing on old customers. You're an old customer if you come in yesterday. So we start developing on that, and so you have to understand that we are developing on the current base.
If I can add, so you can say yes. The reason for the difference is this change in business strategy, as Casper said, from being a startup where we had to focusing on cash, so we upfront very long deals, until now where we focus on subscription. So what we are basically focusing on internally is the ARR, but of course when investors want to see the revenue figure, we're disclosing that. But the important thing for us, and I think also for shareholders, is our ability to grow ARR relatively fast.
Perfect.
So maybe I can add a little bit, sorry, taking time here, but you have to understand, why are we not just invoicing 3 years now? Why not? Then we could get cash into growth, even that we have raised money from the IPO. The reason is that we don't want to give discount to the customers just because they give us money for 3 years. We prefer to have a higher value, yearly value on the customer's contract instead of paying for getting cash in because we have raised money on the IPO.
And I think if we should have a final question, everybody can see that the EBITDA is negative, but I think your comment to that and actually your success in hiring people is probably the main answer to that. And I guess you are measured about that you are actually able to get people, which is hard in the IT world, which is exploding.
You can say we're not focusing on the deficit, on the negative EBITDA, right? Because we're basically giving a task when we went to the stock market, and that was about growth and international growth. And when you're having a subscription business like this, we are buying customers that have a really, really long value going forward. And so I would actually say if we were showing profit right now, we would be doing things the wrong way, because then we should invest even more. I think that's a short story.
Yeah, if I should understand it, it's as long as you grow on the top line, then it's acceptable to have a negative. If you don't grow, then investors should be worried.
Yeah, and of course, it's not numbers that we disclose, but internally we are keeping a very focused eye on how much does we pay for one customers and what are we expecting to getting back. But that's not a number we are disclosing. So that's an internal focus, just to let you know that, of course, it's not just about scaling the revenue. It's also, are we paying the right price for scaling the revenue?
The revenue, yes.
But we are not in a situation where we want to make profit right now. And it's important to understand it's not our journey.
Yeah, but I think that was a pretty well go through the numbers and thinking about the events outside the numbers, and as you started saying, you can get a little bit more dig into the company and where you're coming from and where you want to go on the webinar the December 2nd. So I hope a lot of people will join in there, and I will say thanks to the Penneo team for going through those numbers.
Thank you.
Welcome. And thank you for joining, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for joining.